How to calculate commercial rent. Are you beginning your commercial space search but not sure how to calculate commercial rent? Hi, I'm Nick Zager with Mirlo Real Estate Partners, and in this video, we will help you make sense of the confusing jargon and multitude of lease structures to understand the costs involved, thus helping you to make the best financial decision for your business. We will also provide an example at the end to show you exactly how to compare multiple properties with different lease structures. But if you are new to this channel, please be sure to like, share, and hit that subscribe button to get notifications on all of our videos. So let's dive in. No matter if you are considering a single property or comparing multiple deals, you'll need to understand all the costs associated with leasing the space. Obviously, if you are making an important decision for your business, you need to know the total cost. Calculating commercial rent isn't as simple as multiplying rent by square footage, though these are the first two components we will cover. The price per square foot and the square footage are the simplest to understand, but the final component is a little bit more complicated, and that is the lease structure. Lease structure is extremely crucial, especially for considering multiple deals in order to get an accurate apples-to-apples comparison. The main three factors you need to know to calculate your rent are: number one, base rent, that's the price per square foot; number two, the rentable square footage; and number three, the lease structure. Leases range from absolute net all the way over to full service gross, and there's many different variations in between. Base rent. Unlike residential, which is often a monthly figure, commercial rent is typically advertised as a price per square foot per year. Some examples of quoted base rent will look like this: $25 per square foot FSG, $25 per square foot MG, $25 per square foot NNN. These variations of rate may seem confusing, and that's because they are. They may also seem similar, but in actuality they are quite different, but more on that later. First, we'll talk about square footage. Although it seems straightforward, it can be a confusing concept for the uneducated end user. Many times a tenant will whip out their laser measuring tool or measuring tape and quickly try to verify the footage a landlord is quoting. Then they get upset when their calculation is hundreds or even thousands of square feet less than the landlord is quoting. This is because a landlord uses rentable square foot figure, while the tenant's measurement is closer to the usable or carpentable square foot amount. Usable square footage, or USF, is the actual number of square feet the tenant occupies. Rentable square footage, or RSF, is the number that the landlord uses to calculate the rent. It equals the usable square footage plus the tenant's pro rata share of the building's common areas. For example, lobbies, restrooms, hallways, and public corridors. The pro rata share is often referred to as the usable, rentable, or load factor, and it will typically range from 1.15 to 1.25, or 15 to 25% difference. This means that if the usable footage is 2,000 square feet and you multiply that by the load factor of 1.15, the rentable square footage is 2,300 square feet. Additionally, when calculating floor area, architects use the Building Owners and Managers Association, BOMA, as a standard for measuring floor area. One tricky aspect of this is that the measurements are not to the interior walls, but to the outside of the exterior walls and to the middle of the demising walls between suites. The first two variables are pretty straightforward, but the lease structure, as I said before, can be more tricky. When looking at types of lease or lease structures, it is important to understand exactly what type of lease is being offered so you can create an apples-to-apples comparison between the cost of multiple spaces. Most commercial leases fall into two main categories: net leases and gross leases. In general terms, a gross lease has all the operating costs included in the rent, while net leases separate the rent from the other operating expenses. Full service gross, gross plus utilities, modified gross, triple net, absolute net. The most common type of net lease is the triple net or NNN lease, and the most common type of gross lease is a full service gross lease. Additionally, a hybrid form of both that is very common is called a modified gross lease, where the tenant pays utilities, janitorial, and various other expenses. Let's dive deeper into these common lease structures. Triple net leases. Leases structured as triple net are becoming more and more popular as they are a preferred lease structure for investment properties. This is because they are less risky for the property owners. Under this structure, a tenant pays a base rate. usually a negotiated price per square foot, and on top of that, the tenant is also responsible for the actual operating costs of the property, or the 3 nets. Those are common area maintenance, or CAM, real estate taxes, and the landlord's insurance. In a triple net lease, the tenant pays the landlord the projected operating expenses over the course of the year, and the actual costs are trued up at the beginning of the next calendar year. Gross leases. Gross leases are, for all intents and purposes, an all-inclusive option, where the rent includes the operating costs and the tenant just pays base rent. Gross leases are common in very high-end Class A properties and additionally smaller properties owned by individual property owners. This is the easiest form of lease to calculate the costs because there are no additional rent. Modified gross. This is a hybrid of the gross and triple net lease. It is set up with operating expenses that are included, but with specific exceptions. In the area where I practice, many landlords use a modified gross lease with a provision that allows for a cost of living increase as additional rent over time. A popular form of this is called a base year lease, where the initial operating expenses are included in the base rent, but the tenant's pro rata share of future increases in any of the 3 nets can increase and be passed through to the tenant in future years throughout the lease term. In other words, in this structure, the tenant pays an increase in operating expenses only if the expenses increase from the actual expenses in its first year in the space, or its base year. Now that we have the basic lease structures down, we can dig in and better understand how to compare the deals you're looking at by looking at the following chart. The first column shows triple net leases. The second column shows how a full service gross lease is set up. And the third column shows a modified gross lease. As you can see, in a triple net lease, the base rent is $18 a foot, and the operating expenses are another $8 a foot. When you add those two together, the gross rent is $26, which is the same number that you're paying in a full service gross lease and in a modified gross lease. However, in a triple net lease, the utilities are typically not included. Neither is janitorial. You'll generally have to pay for that on top of your actual expenses. In a full service gross lease, utilities are generally included, and so is janitorial. And in a modified gross lease, neither utilities or janitorial are included. Truly understand the total costs of your lease, you'll need to run an analysis with your broker and understand all the additional expenses so that you can add it up, and at the end of the day understand the total cost of your lease for the term that you're going to pay and compare those to the other spaces and hopefully be able to make the right decision. Commercial real estate is incredibly complex, and if you aren't an insider, good information can be difficult to come by. In my practice, I am always learning and growing, and I like to diligently serve my clients and provide them with the best tools to make the right decisions for their business as real estate. So if you have any specific questions or comments about anything I've said, feel free to contact me directly by email or phone, or leave a comment below. If you found value or liked the video and would like more information about how to properly navigate the commercial real estate world, please check out these other videos. Again, I'm Nick Zager from Mirlo Real Estate Partners, and I look forward to connecting again.